Hello beautiful people, welcome to my channel. My name is Teresa and I am your cruise director on the Magical Mystery Tour. We are there. We are at the end of Natasha Denona Palette Lucky Dip month. It is now time for the rankings. What's my favourite? What's my least favourite? Before we get to that, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, ring the notification bell to be alerted to any new uploads, and if you like this video at the end, please give it a big thumbs up. Let's get to it. Did anyone else just feel like they were Wiggles fingers? Anywho, I have gone back and forth so much over the month on what is my favourite and where it ranks. Like up until as I just pulled all the palettes out and stuck them up here next to me in the order of 23 down to 1. And there are some that have changed as I'm doing this and re-looked at them. Now before we start with the rankings, I do just want to say these are my personal preferences currently at this moment in time, as of today, this very last few minutes. Personal preference, Natasha is my favourite palette brand. Do I hate any? I probably don't hate any of them. It is literally least favourite. Least favourite to most favourite. I love this brand. I don't ever hide that fact that they are my favourite. So coming in at number 23, and this has changed, like I said, I have to look very different to what is numbered here because I had to rethink as I was going around. So coming in at number 23, we have the Love palette. And it probably wasn't going to be any big surprise when I created the look for this, which by the way was my favourite look I've ever created with this palette. I did say that it was probably my least favourite palette. The reason being is the undertones just don't feel right on this for my colouring for me. The look that I created this month was absolutely the favourite look I've ever created. I actually don't mind that shade, but I've got that in a heap of other palettes in any case. It's just, a lot of people really like this. It just is not my jam. At number 22, we have the Trio Chrome palette. Now the reason for this, this row 100% is my jam colour wise. This one that I created the looks from wasn't my favourite look I've ever created, was probably one of my least favourite looks I've ever created in actual fact. The mattes, the quality of the mattes in here are beautiful, don't get me wrong. Like they're a beautiful, beautiful formula. This is what lets it down. These are the most expensive formulas to make, like a multi-chrome, duochrome, multi-chrome eyeshadow. This palette was misleading in that she named it Trio Chrome and I said at the time everyone was expecting to get multi-chrome, at least 3 shifts of colour in it. They're a duochrome. It was named Trio Chrome because there were 3 duochromes in it. Sounds convoluted? No crap. And on that note, these formulas are just not the best formulas in hers. This should have been a midi palette and it should have been better. Coming in at 21 is the Xenon palette. Now the reason for this is it's a nice palette, the formula is great. Depending on your undertone, like we do have, these are sort of in that brown family here. This leans brown, this leans sort of pinkish. Depending on your undertone, it's just grayscale. So with that being said, get the mini. The mini palette is more than enough in this, and to be quite honest, Blowing Smoke, the 9-pan palette from Colourpop, much more affordable option. There's just, like you can see that that's meant to be blue. It just doesn't show up like that on people. I like playing in it, but I'm just as happy playing in the mini palette. At number 20, we have the first of the face palettes, and it is the Love face palette. Now, I know this was all about eyeshadows this month, but because there are these in it, I do have to include them in it. This is a blue undertone. It's a really weird, cool undertone. This isn't quite right either, the shades. I prefer the tonality in all of these much more than I do the Love palette. Like, I would pick this over the Love. Clearly, I have picked it over the Love palette, but even those 5, I would pick over the Love palette, and I would pick these 5 shadows over the mini Love palette. This should have been the mini Love, and get rid of that. Which leads us into the next face palette. So coming in at number 19, we have the Glam Face palette in the shade Dark. I did like the look that I created out of this. The only reason this is here is because it's the wrong colour story for me. The light is the better colour story. This wasn't made for my colouring. I made it work, and I got it because I collect her palettes. But this was not designed for my colouring at all. So it was always going to be way too dark. That being said, I still liked it, but it's there for that reason. Another face palette is coming in at 18, which is the Hyper Natural face palette. This is a great concept in, let's get 3 tones of contour bronzer, let's get a couple of blushes, and then this. The issue that I have with it just wasn't executed correctly. This would have been better had it just been a ombre look to it. And the same with this for that matter, because it's making it show that it's like 3 completely different shades, and they're so small that they're too small for your brushes to get in there comfortably. So you end up swirling invariably between a couple. Just make it an ombre, and I don't think that if you'd had that ombre gradient like the, what's it called? I can't think of the palette, I've got it, but also like the Kevin Aucoin in his contour book. Now, eyeshadow wise, they say that you can use this, and I did. I've used this to be my transition shade, but you have to work to do that. These, again, I just get the concept. I'm not sold on this shade at all, and I'm probably not sold on that shade. And it's the formula of them. I think they're a cream to powder. These shades are better, but what I would have liked is a couple of a light and a mid-tone matte in there, and that would have worked a lot better. Next up at number 17, we have the Zendo palette. A lot of people didn't like this. I think it's probably not as bad as people say. I think it's probably a little bit underrated. Again, you know, that's just a really nice warm palette. That's a really great cool tone palette. The look that I created combined the two to show that you could use warm and cool tones together. But you have to think about it. You have to be conscious about what you're doing with it. This is a great, it's not too yellow, this particular mint shade. And it actually feels cooling when you stick your finger in there. And I quite like that tone, but everything else I just prefer over it. Coming in at number 16 is first of the super colourful palettes, and that is the Circo Loco palette. Couple of problems with this one is it should have been a midi palette. It should never have been one of these larger palettes. So you were already limited in your colour story with who was going to get it. Then going to this size limited people budget wise. It's a great colourful story, but you have to be in the mood to really mix it. I think, and I said this in the video, I think if you were to pop them all out and group them together, do a bit of a blend bunny on it and group them together in usable colours. So for example, put this, and then move that up there. You've got these two, so pull that down there. This one, and this, like, just group them together in their blocks. Actually, that could go there. Like, I'm anal in that I like them to stay in their corresponding names. But if you have this and you find yourself not reaching for it much, just pop the colours out and reorganise it to where you are comfortable, and it can become a bit more cohesive for you when you look at it. It'll really help you with working out what you want to do. At number 15, this ended up a lot lower than what I thought it would. This would have been 18 months ago. This would have been in my top 5, I think, which just goes to show we go on swings and roundabouts with how we feel about a palette, how we feel about colours, depending on moods. And right now, Retro Glam, for me, is sitting at number 15. I love looking at this colour story. I just love it. I love retro looks. And by that, I mean, I could happily sit here and do pin curls in my hair and create a 1940s vibey look with it. And this makes me think about it. I love Art Deco. I love Art Nouveau. And this gives me the really romantic, soft, romantic looks of Art Nouveau. This shade's incredible. But normally when I am creating looks, I do stick around the greens, I will say. So it's just, yeah, I'm really surprised. It has just dropped down lower. I'm just not feeling those colours. I'm really leaning into more neutrals or different formulas than that now, and a bit more complexity in the colours. And speaking of colour, we have at number 14, the pastel palette. This is a fun palette. Like, this is fun. I do wish it had a bit of depth like the Pretty in Pastels does by Glaminatrix. But when I did play in this, I did still love it. This does have a bit more, probably a bit more variety in the colours, but Glaminatrix does have the depth. This is, I mean, you have to use this in nearly every look you make, as it is the darkest shade that you will get. And by being the darkest shade, it's still not particularly dark. So, and then, I mean, you can blend a little bit. I keep going to wipe my fingers off on a cloth that I don't want to use because it's what I'm using to clean my makeup. This is fun, but everything else, again, I don't hate it. I love playing in that. That is my mermaid jam. It makes me feel happy. Coming in at number 13, we have an older palette. This is old. This is definitely expired, and formulas have changed. The mattes in the Bieber palette at number 15, Bieber, the mattes in the Bieber palette are still beautiful. They're still stunning. I like that we've got a bit more neutral here. This is more really warm tone leaning into caramels, and then you've got true browns here. The shimmers, however, though, have been left behind. This is one of the ones that I would love to see her reformulate, repackage in the midi size, like, oh, I can feel the magnets. In the midi size, so in the smaller palette, the more affordable palette, and just reformulate the shimmers in it. And I wouldn't want, like, I'd be happy if she kept it with those. There's essentially 3 shimmers in this, and I'd be happy if she kept it to 3 shimmers, like do 2 shimmers and one of the sparkle toppers. Chef's kiss. At number 12, we have the newest palette, which is the Roxa palette. I get that she wanted to create purple, and this is pretty. And the formula is amazing on it. Like, the formula is amazing. I don't know. It might be a little too late coming into this purple. I also think, let's cover that. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really, I have other purple palettes that I actually prefer over this. I do really like this, and a couple of these shades are absolutely incredible. But not that we talk about cancel culture here, but I do have in the back of my collection He Who Shall Not Be Named, who created a purple palette before he disappeared from YouTube, except for when he does launches. And that still is an amazing palette. Even the Norvina palette that's got purples in it, I really like. So, yeah. Next up, at number 11, is another one of her newer palettes, which is the I Need a Warm. This is absolutely beautiful, and I love all of these palettes from can't even tell you what number I love them from, but it's so hard. It has done my head in ranking it. This would be my daughter's favourite palette. This is what she used on her wedding day. I just think it's probably missing a bit more, maybe a bit more contrast in it, because they're all like, this is so close to this. These, like, I don't know how many of these deep browns we actually needed. I think we could have done with just one of these four and then got a bit of a mid-tone between these sorts of shades, and then a super light. Shimmers I'm fine with, but I would have preferred a bit more contrast. It does make beautiful looks, however. Now we're down to the top 10. Coming in at number 10 is the Bronze palette. See all my notes about the above, what we've just had in the I Need a Warm. The biggest issue that I have in this is that it really needed some lightness in it. In an ideal world, and you could do it, in an ideal world you would create a palette out of these two to get the contrast that you want. I could pop all of these shades out, which I might actually do at some stage. We know what the colours are. It's annoying, it's going to do my head in, but I think between these two palettes you could create the most gorgeous summer bronzy warm palette. So those two together could be my perfect palette. At number 9, what I used on my bridesmaids for my wedding day 3 years ago is the retro palette. This was controversial when it came out because it didn't match the retro mini. I think you can hear my dinner cooking there. I'm really sorry. I like a rosy palette. I like something with a bit of burgundy in it. Grounding eyeshadow palettes with burgundy is really nice because it can create a bit of depth and they can pull tones from the rest of the eyeshadow. A burgundy to me is a neutral brown. This is one of those palettes that I think that you either love or you just go, did nothing for me. For me, I love it. At number 8, this is probably one of my, I think this was my first purchase of Natasha, and it was such a fun palette. I just don't think this gets the love that it should absolutely still get. This is the Sunrise palette, and it creates sunrise looks. It just creates, like with these three colours here, these three mattes, this really light citrusy yellow, this orange, this burgundy, then you've got this to ground it and add some depth to it. They are amazing shades that will give you the most beautiful sunrise tropical colours to your eyes. And then you can go in with golds, you can go in with a bit of burgundy, you can even go in with like this purpley colour. It's different. I love this palette. It's just fun. I think it's underrated. I don't think it gets the love that it deserves. At number 8, we have the last of the face palettes, my sentimental favourite. It's what I wore on my wedding day along with the palette that comes after it. And this is the Glam Face Palette Light. Look at it. This thing, like, look at it. It's a mess. It has seen some wear because I take it travelling with me all the time because this and a bronzer and I'm good to go. I love this. This is just pretty it's always going to have a soft spot in my heart. It is the best of the face palettes for me. And I mean, look at those shimmers. A lot of people don't like the blush formula and the highlighter in these. I don't actually have a problem with it. Mine still works. If it is starting to dry out, just work your finger over the top of it. They just went flying. Work your finger over the top of it and it will warm up and it'll soften it all up, and it's completely workable. I'm gonna go fix this fallen over pile before I get down to the top 6. Did you guess what number 6 was from what I said about being used on my wedding day? Should do if you've watched my videos before. And if you've watched this series, because the Glam palette was the other palette that I used on my wedding day, just to add a bit of extra depth to it. I just played around in them till I was happy in my face. This is just a great workhorse of a palette. It is cooler toned to neutral. You hold it there and it doesn't look like much. These 3 shades here, like, it's still amazing. I still love, like, look at those mattes still. How beautiful is that? These shimmers aren't as spectacular, admittedly, as some of her others anymore, but they're still good. Not everything needs to be blow your socks off in shimmer. There is a tone for everyone in there. That is a palette that I'm about to say that is a palette that I will have forever, but I will never declutter any of my Natashas. Say it now. Never, ever, ever, ever declutter a Natasha palette. Top 5, people. Have you worked out what's left? Have you worked out what my top 5 are? Coming in at number 5 is a palette that is no longer available, but I do hope she revamps. I'm happy for her to condense down some of the shades, but that is the Metropolis palette. I hope she doesn't do what she did with the gold palette and pull out those shades that made the gold palette what it was. But in saying that, you can get the essence of the gold in the shades that are here. I love this, and it wasn't until I picked it up doing these looks for this month that I remembered how great it was. I obviously stuck around this green shade and that, but these mattes, like these mattes still look incredible. And I'm just going in, let's have a look. What have we got? Look at this. Like, look at them. This is the heart and soul of Natasha Denona, essentially. Like I said, I do hope that she re-releases this, and just in an updated formulas. I would love all the tones to stay exactly the same, because I've got that light there to ground everything at the end. Don't change the color story, just update the formula. Everyone would be happy. I would buy it. I would buy it in the large size, truth be told. Number 4, we have the My Dream palette. This, oh, I love how I feel emboldened in it. Is, for want of a better word, you've got essentially your cooler tone, your burgundies, your depth, your grunge in there. Then you've got what's pretty neutral there. Like, that doesn't look spectacular, and that probably looks like too intense. Together, this creates magic. Just to give you an idea of the shimmers, and my fingers are so disgustingly, terribly covered in pigment now. So there are 4 of them. Like, they're just gorgeous. Now, but this is the magic shade, and I hope, I'm trying to get, see how it looks there? It looks green, it looks burgundy. The shift in this is the best shift in a palette with that duochrome in it. It looks spectacular on the eyes. This is Natasha created because it was her dream palette, and for quite some time it was my dream palette. I mean, it is just, yeah, it's beautiful. It has such amazing shades in it. At number 3, which I'm going back and refilming because I accidentally forgot, number 4. So at number 3 we have the palette that snuck up on me because I tried it, the formulas were amazing, but it was just the colour story. The colour story just didn't seem much. Just didn't seem like it was worth the spend. And then I started picking it up and using it again and again and again. And every look that I create, I feel beautiful in. Like, I just feel beautiful. I feel like it creates a blurring effect to my face. I feel like it softens my features. I feel just elegant in it. And that is the Golden palette. I mean, look at it. It looks boring. It looks boring. It looks like, this is the updated version of her discontinued gold palette that everyone complained about because we lost the heart and the soul of it in those green colours. But you can pull them out of the Metropolis palette if you want that. This just creates beautiful looks. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. Like, far out. I just keep reaching for it. I just kept feeling beautiful when I'm wearing it. Top 2. I think you can guess what they are. What is going to be number 2 and what is going to be number 1. And I sat here and I thought about it for some time. Number 2 is my most worn palette from Natasha. And I'll explain to you why it didn't end up in number 1. So number 2 is the I Need a Nude. This is number 1 on most people's collections. And it is for a reason, because it's, again, it's a workhorse of a palette. So it just creates subtle looks. You can add intensity by going into this darker shimmer and into this dark, like lean into those and you can get some intensity. But these create sort of nudie looks that you don't have to think about. Like, this palette applies itself. Like, you just don't have to think about it. So it is my workhorse palette. It is, I mean, you can see, I don't know if you can see from the shine on there that this has been beaten around a fair bit. I take this with me most times when I go away because I don't want to have to think about it. But it didn't end up in the number 1 spot. And number 1 is, I couldn't let anything else be number 1, the Yucca palette. Why is this number 1? I've got my eyes covered. This is, I have hazily yellow eyes. They're a grungy green. These shades are my eye colour, and this almost makes my eyes look like they're lit. It makes my irises look like they are lit within my iris because it makes them really pop and pulls them out. And I love this palette so very much. The colours in this, to me, are just the most, I mean, look at these shimmers. I just love them. It's got, I love murky, grungy greens. And it was this that made me realise that. When I got this, I had nothing like this in my collection. I've probably got a couple of palettes that have got the colour stories similar to this, but this is what started it. This is to me the most beautiful, beautiful, beautiful palette, and if I was creating a palette on my own for me, it would be this. If I was creating a palette for you, it'd be closer to this. But for me, and for anyone with swampy green hazel eyes, you should have this. You should have it. Thank me later. I've got a few tutorials on it. I love this one. I love it. Even that, like, it literally looks like I've got spotlights in my eyes when I wear that palette. I love it so much, and I'm just speechless for it. Just speechless. It is a unique palette. I love that, and I'm just going to keep using that same word. I love it, I love it, I love it. So that was the 23 larger palettes that I own by Natasha Denona. If you go to the playlist, and I have a Natasha Denona playlist that every video of every look I've created is in there. If you have not watched the mini palette, I think I have about 17 or 18 of those that I created looks with now. I do have more since then. I'm probably sitting at about 20 now of the smaller palettes. But that is it for the month. Do you agree with where they are? What is your favorite Natasha palette? What's your top 5 even? What are your top 5 Natasha palettes? I would love to know. It can be a combination of the minis. What are your favorite Natasha palettes? I do hope that you've enjoyed this. I am looking forward to having a little bit of time to myself next month and the month after for that. I don't know when the next palette lucky dip will be. It won't be for a few months yet. If it is something that interests you, and there is any one that in particular, any brand that you have a particular interest in that you would like me to look at, if I have it, I'll add it to the list of consideration to do for the next one, because I go in blindly and I just hope that you like them. But until next time, my friends, I mean, that's my deep, dirty secret is Natasha. Oh, I would probably cry if I met her. Until next time, my friends, don't forget, tell your mum, tell your sister, tell your friends. Come along, subscribe, hang out. I'm going to go have my wine now. Till next time, take care. Bye.